Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to me and another episode of Palette Roulette. This is episode 49, I believe. So we've been doing this now for 49 weeks and it seems crazy that I have that many palettes, but you guys, we have so many more to do. So this is a palette series in which I use one palette a week and I come up with multiple eye looks with this palette, use every shade in the palette, come to you and let you know what I think of that palette at the end of the week and let an app choose a new palette for me. This week's palette that we will be discussing is the ABH Jackie Aina collab that came out in mid-ish August to all stores. But I think it actually came out early August to the ABH website. So this is the palette. This is what the palette looks like. It is a really pretty iridescent like snake skin cover, which is a move away from the velour velvet packaging that they usually have on their 14 pan eyeshadow palettes. And as I said, whoops, you open it up. These are the shades in the palette. It is 14 pans. 3 of those shades are pressed pigments, so pressed pigments are not to be used on the eyes according to the FDA. They are not eye safe. I will let you know that I use those shades on my eyes and have never had a problem with them. They will maybe cause some irritation, some staining. They have stained my eyes, but they've never really caused irritation to my eyes in the past. So I will continue to use shades like that until they start causing more irritation than just staining my skin. I don't find that to be an irritant. If I am going to go do another eye look and those shades have stained my skin, I will just cover it up with some primer. So I'm not really super like worried about those kind of primers. This palette does have about 1,000 cumulative reviews between the ABH website, the Sephora website, and the Ulta website. Those are the 3 websites that I just really kind of went into to dig into some reviews. Most are good. They are at a 4.8 stars on Ulta and Sephora and a 5.0 stars on the ABH website. And like I said, that is a cumulative about roughly 1,000 reviews. I think it's like 956 as I am filming. It is a $45 palette and it contains 7 grams, 0.392 ounces, or 0.028 ounces per pan, which is roughly half the size of a ColourPop single shadow. So my battery died and I'm not sure where it was, but it does have an 18-month shelf life. It is a cruelty-free brand and it has it has 8 metallic shades and 6 matte shades. 3 of those matte shades are those pressed pigment shades. So it is a limited edition palette released in early August-ish, still on the website. It was released shortly before Norvina started like rocket firing her palettes at you, so it didn't get its glory as far as I'm concerned. It does have both cool and warm tones in it. It does have a really nice mirror. You can bend it all the way back so that you can hold it just with the one hand for either mirror use or, you know, shade use, whatever. It is a little more stiff than the other palettes are when you bend them all the way back, and it did come with a brush like all the other palettes do. The palette itself, as always, is made in the US. The brush is made in the PRN. That's a crazy noise from my phone. And the PRN is, of course, China. I always take these brushes that come in the ABH palettes and toss them into my dual-sided brush container, mostly because I don't like dual-sided brushes, but also because I don't like these dual-sided brushes, especially. This blendy side is actually not really the best blendy side. It's kind of stiff and not super like, it's too densely packed in my opinion for blending. And then this side here is actually a nice packer brush, but the blendy side is a wee bit pokey, so I don't prefer these brushes on my eyes, so I just typically just take them out and put them in my dual-ended brush holder. I would say that these shadows performed really well with or without a primer. I know that the first couple days I wore it, I did have it out and about with me and I forgot a primer. I do like to use like an actual primer on my eyes. Either the MAC, I have the MAC Soft Ochre Paint Pot, or some actual primer on my eyes. I don't like to use concealer. I find that concealer actually creases really bad on my eyes, so I don't use it ever as an eye primer. So I didn't have an eye primer the first couple days I was out and about using this palette, and it performed quite well. Actually, I would say a good 10 to 12 hours before it started to fade, and even as it started to fade, the ones that I saw fade the worst, and it wasn't really fading, it was just kind of like the shimmerness of them were gone, were the shimmers in the palette. Let's do some swatches of this palette really quick. We'll talk through them. I'm just going to swatch them on my hand, you guys, right here, because it seems that we love live swatching and hate using my photos of the swatches. I don't really prefer the photos of the swatches either, if I have to be honest. The first shade here is Soleil, and it is a metallic peachy gold. It does have a creamy texture. It is really creamy in the pan. It does kind of clump up. I don't know if you guys can see that. It does have a little bit of fallout upon application, but I didn't see it falling out throughout the day. This next shade here is Supreme, and it is one of your pressed pigments in the palette. It is a matte pink pressed pigment. It can be sheared out with a very, very light touch. Otherwise, it's pretty opaque in nature. And this one here is Pinker. It is another one of the pressed pigments in the palette. It is a matte, like cool toned burgundy berry color. It is, like I said, another one of those pressed pigments. This one next to Supreme in an eye look, really you didn't see a whole lot of variation in those two colors together. So I tried to put them into eye looks on separate parts of the eye so that they didn't like meld together too much. This one actually has a little bit of glitter in it. I don't know if you guys will be able to see that, but it does have a little bit of glitter in it in the pan. Can you guys see that? Probably not. It performs like a matte does. Once it's on your eye and going onto your eye, it doesn't perform with like as if it has glitter in it. There you can see little bits of glitter in here, little bits of shimmeriness to it, but it's not like satiny shimmer. It's just like little bits of glitter. It is one of the colors that stains your eye. I don't find that this Supreme one does, but Pinker definitely does. It kind of reminds me of Risque in the Huda Beauty Rose Gold Remastered palette, only maybe a little more pigmented. I love that. And these two colors on the eyes were beautiful together as long as you had them separated enough for this one. This one's super opaque on the eye, so much so that it didn't like blend into the other one so much that it just looked like a one color eye look. The next one here is Big Wig. And you can see by that swatch, it's, God, you guys, I had the worst time with this shade. I had the worst time getting it blended out. It is a matte purple pressed pigment. It worked better with primer than it did without, for sure. That is the one shade in this palette that I would say you definitely need primer with. I struggled with it. I struggled with pigmentation with it. I struggled with blendability with it. I struggled with that purple. I wanted it to work so, so badly. But I remember putting it into one of the eye looks that I'll show you pictures of. And I would put it down and start to blend it away, and it would blend away. It would blend away. And so then I would pack it in again, and it would, as it sat on the eye, get deeper, oxidize a little bit, I guess, if you will. And so the new portions of the shade that I was patting down onto my eyes would be a different color of purple. I struggled with that color, but that's the only shade in the palette I've really struggled with. Again, it is another pressed pigment, so all three of your pressed pigments are these three right here, and it will stain your eyes. Then we have this shade, which is Dwalis. I don't even know if you guys can see that. Yeah, you guys can see that, right? It is a metallic kind of olive gold color. It's gold with not quite a green shift, but not quite not a green shift. Let me build it up just a little bit. Is that better? Maybe? Yes. It works so much better with your finger to apply it than it does with a brush, even a wet brush. So there's that. And then we have this shade here, which is Credit. And it is a matte brown that has a bit of a purple tone to it. Let me build it up just a little bit. When you put it next to these two shades here, especially, it actually looks a lot more plum than it does brown. But it is what's in my eye look today, and it can perform very much as a brown. It is here on this outer V and like blended into the crease. I think it's a really pretty deepening shade, and I had no problems using it. I need to find a wipe for my fingers. The last one on that top row is called Lituation. This one reminds me of Minx in the Tarte Artist Pro palette. And this is so, so pretty. So this is a metallic lavender taupe color. It is a shade that just kind of melts into your eye. I found it to be super, super pretty. It could look more brown or purple depending on what colors you put it next to. It also kind of could sway a little gray, which I found interesting. It's just a really interesting color in the palette. And I had a whole eye look dedicated to that shade because I just find it to be so super pretty. I don't know if you guys can tell in this swatch, but it kind of leans like a lavender gray brown. It's a really pretty shade. I really, really love that shade. Probably one of my favorites in the palette. I would say in this row, my two favorites are this one here called Pinker. It is the like deeper burgundy shade, and of course this one here called Lituation. And see those pinks kind of, I don't know if you guys can tell, but they kind of stained my arm right here. But that was where that pinker shade was. So now we're going to do this bottom row here, and we're going to start with this one over here called Zam. Like damn, only with a Z. So this shade here is a little bit different than the rest of the shades in the palette. I feel like it's a little more loosely packed in there, and it does produce an awful lot of fallout with it. It's the only shade in the palette that I felt like I had a real problem with fallout as far as my eye look went. Not that it was falling out throughout the day, because it definitely wasn't, but in application, the rest of these shades performed really well in application. Very little fallout, which was odd for an ABH palette for me. But this one, so much fallout. And it is a metallic rose gold. It's just really pretty. It is so much better put on your eye with your finger than it is anything else. But again, I had a huge problem with fallout with that shadow getting it on my eye, but it didn't matter what form I was using, wet brush, dry brush, finger, there was a ton of fallout with it. Then we have Wigglies, which is a beautiful metallic red color. It's got this like really super berry undertone to it. It's a really creamy shadow in the pan. I loved it. It reminds me of Natasha Denona's Phlox, I think it's called, in the Sunrise palette. Just a really, really pretty shade. And then we have Shookington, which is a metallic purple that's kind of got a blue shift to it. It is so pretty. I did a dedicated eye look to this color as well because I just loved it. And then we have Trust Issues. So Trust Issues, I'm gonna get some more on here. Trust Issues, well, it looks white on my arm right there, but it is the yellow color in my eye look on the inner third or 2/3 of my lid. It is this shade here. It's this white shade right here. It looks white in the pan, but actually performs as a gold, and it is described on ABH as a shimmering white gold color. It is super sparkly, as you guys can see, super creamy in the pan. I loved it in the inner corner. I also loved it in my brow bone just because it had that kind of white to gold shift in it. It was super pretty. And then the last three colors are Edges, which is this one here. That is a matte, like burnt orange with a red undertone. Swatched a little better. Then we have Sponsored, which is that one. I'm going to deepen that up. Which is a metallic brown teal. It reminds me of a color in the Tardis Pro palette. I can't remember what that one is, but this one is another shade that just kind of melted into your eye and created less like creasiness to it because it was melting in, and it actually is in it actually is in my eye look here, in between the brown and the gold in my eye look, and I just think it's so pretty and creates a little bit of dimension in your eye look. And then the last one is this one. It is Ginger, and Ginger is just a matte orange brown. This whole row honestly was some go-to shades for me. I used this one quite often as a brow bone color because of that white to gold shift in it. I used this one quite often in my looks. I use this one quite often to blend out stuff. This red is just a gorgeous red color. The only one I didn't use a whole lot of was this one here, which is Zam, and it's because of the sheer amount of fallout that I had with it. I was a little bit, it was a little bit frustrating. But these are the colors again. I loved that it was kind of split into two major groupings. So you had like your berry tones over here and your like neutral tones over here, and then a couple of really pretty just go with either or kind of shimmers. I really loved this palette. I'm really happy that I have it in my collection. I didn't struggle with any of them except for this one here, which was the Big Wig one. It's just, you know, you hear all the time purples are super hard to do. What I did find is I patted this one down and then tried to blend it with this one, it did blend a little bit better, and these two colors are perfect for each other. In that sense, this has enough purple in it that it just helps to deepen this one and blend it out more, and this one blended so much better than this one. Also, pressed pigments are a little harder to work with, right? So those three shades right there are your pressed pigments in the palette, and the only one that I found hard to work with was this one here. I wore this palette every day. I was super excited to wear it. I know that I didn't feel that way about some of the other palettes that I've used in the past, and this was the first time I have used this because, as I said, this palette came out about 2 weeks later than the first Norvina palette came out, and then 2 weeks after that, and then 4 days after that, we had volume 2 and 3 come out as well. I don't think it got the hype it should have gotten. It is a really good palette. Aina is not somebody that I watch. She can be problematic from what I understand, but I did watch her. I have watched her. I like her. I think that she can be super fun. I don't know much about the problematic stuff. I don't get all wrapped up in the gossip channels or the drama of YouTube, because that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to, you know, just have fun with what I'm doing here. I love this palette. I'm super glad to have it in my collection. You know, I wasn't sure if I was going to pick it up because I don't think the color scheme in here is anything that I don't have in my collection. The one thing that I will say about it is the pigmentation on them is a lot, except for that purple. I didn't really like that purple. The pigmentation on them is something that I knew Jackie was trying to perfect for people of color so that they didn't have to like fix a color by mixing it with another color to make it work on their skin. So I can appreciate that from this palette, and for that reason I didn't know if I wanted to pick it up because I have plenty of these colors in my collection that do work for my skin. But I love me an ABH formula. And I'm really super happy I picked up this palette. I will say the pressed pigments are a little more grippy in the pan than most of the other ones. You know, when you have an ABH eyeshadow palette, you're used to like sticking your finger in and swirling it around. It feels like butter on your finger. These three did not do that, and this one didn't, but this one is a little more loosely packed in there. So the shimmers in here, super, super creamy. I don't know if you guys can see this purple one, but it's like, for me, just swirling my finger in it, it's kind of shoved up on the edges because they're soft. They're so soft in there. I was pretty shocked at the lack of fallout with the palette because ABH tends to have an awful lot of fallout, but not this one. This one did well. Now that we're done with that, let's go into what is the next palette. For those of you unaware, I do have a Samsung Note 9, and I do use an app that I picked up on the Play Store that is called Decide Now, and it's just a Wheel of Fortune app. You can also pick them up on the iOS App Store. I only know that because the person that I got my inspiration from, she has an iPhone, and she also was using a Wheel of Fortune type app to choose her palettes, and all that information is down in my description box. So I put all of my palettes into this wheel, and as we use them, I take them out. As I get new ones, I do put them back into the wheel, and then you just press the button here and it spins. And I have the Viseart Sultry palette. Let me go get that one. I think it's interesting to go from the palette I just had to this one. This is the Viseart Sultry Muse palette. So it is all shimmers, if I remember correctly. Yeah, satins and shimmers. This is it. It is very... not my color scheme. I might add some of my single shadows to this just to make it work for me in what I like to do. I am at home this week, so I'm not going to have to take it with me and pack it in a bunch of other shades just to make it work. So I have my whole well, vanity at my disposal, which makes me happy. You guys know that I'm not really a neutral kind of girl, and this is definitely a palette that screams neutral. Wearable, as people like to say, but like I wear color every single day, so I don't know what they mean by wearable. But this is definitely definitely what people would consider a wearable palette. I will use this next week, come at you next Monday with my thoughts on this palette. Alright, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. Please like the video or dislike the video. Give it a thumbs up or thumbs down. Really doesn't matter. It just shows YouTube that my video is being watched. And as silly as it sounds, it really does help our channels out here in this wonderful world of YouTube. I hope that you guys had a good time today, and I hope that you guys have an amazing week. I can't wait to see you guys down in the comments section. Please let me know what eyeshadows you're using this week, and until next time, bye guys.